friends, this is a video on water technology, that is a unit 1 of engineering chemistry, and we are giving you a revision of this unit in this video. So let's start. We are going to cover impurities in water, hardness of water, determination of hardness by EDTA method, effects of hard water in boiler. We will cover the remaining topics also in this video only. So, what are the impurities that are present in water? So, there are 4 types of impurities, that is suspended, colloidal, biological, dissolved, right? And इसमें जो है आपके examples हैं clay का, mud and organic matter. In colloidal you have colloidal particles. Biological impurities include microscopic algae, fungi, bacteria. Dissolved impurities are of 2 types. Number 1 is dissolved gases and number 2 is dissolved salts. Dissolved salts are basically those in which the whole unit is going to be covered. Okay, so dissolved gases include CO2, chlorine gas, H2S, sulfur oxides की gases and nitrogen oxides की gases. Now, dissolved salts includes sulfates, bicarbonates, chloride and nitrates of calcium, magnesium, iron, aluminium, sodium and potassium. Okay, our next topic is hardness of water. Hardness of water are of 2 types, permanent hardness and temporary hardness. Permanent hardness is also known as non-alkaline hardness or carbonate hardness, and temporary hardness is also known as alkaline hardness or bicarbonate hardness. Actually, I have interchanged these two while writing. Temporary hardness is due to dissolved salts like bicarbonates of calcium, magnesium, iron, aluminium and manganese, and permanent hardness is due to dissolved salts of chloride, sulfate, nitrite of calcium, magnesium, iron, aluminium and manganese, etc. Basically these are alkaline earth matter salts. So alkaline earth matters as well as the first group also, such as sodium and potassium. So how can you remove the temporary hardness? You can remove it by boiling and filtration, but for permanent hardness you cannot remove it by boiling and filtration. There are various special methods which are used. So what is the numerical part that is asked from this topic? You are going to be asked the hardness and given the concentration of that salt. So what is the formula that you are going to use is hardness is equals to concentration that is given to us of the salt into weight of CaCO3 upon molecular weight of that compound. Remember that concentration should be in ppm or milligram per liter, right? And why we are using calcium carbonate? There are 2 reasons. Because it is highly soluble and it is easy to calculate because its molecular weight is 100. So we are using calcium carbonate, right? So let's take an example. So we are given that this much is hardness and this much is the concentration of calcium bicarbonate in the water, and you have to find the hardness of the water. So simply use this formula. You are given the concentration. Remember, the concentration should be in ppm and milligram per liter. So the concentration is milligram per liter. Okay, it's fine. Direct put in this formula concentration, that is 40.5 into weight of calcium carbonate, molecular weight is 100 upon molecular weight of calcium bicarbonate is 162, and on solving you will get 25, and you can write it as ppm of CaCO3, right? So the topic is determination of hardness by EDTA method. So in this topic we have to do 2 steps. Number 1 is standardization of EDTA and number 2 is estimation of total hardness. So in this step we are going to find out the molarity of EDTA, because sometimes we are not given that molarity directly. So what we do, First of all, prepare the standard solution of ZnSO4. Then fill the burette with the EDTA. Pipette out 25 ml of standard ZnSO4 solution in a conical flask. And the important thing that is asked is add ammonical buffer and 4-5 drops of EBT indicator, and it is to maintain the pH. After this you will get wine red color, and this is titrated against Na2-EDTA solution. Basically this is that we are calling EDTA from burette till the wine red color changes to blue. So here the color is changing from red to blue, and we have to note down the reading as XML, and then this XML is the reading of the volume of EDTA that is consumed by this ZnSO4. Then the step 2 is estimation of total hardness. In total hardness we have to do the similar steps, but what we have to do, we have to replace the ZnSO4 by hard water. Means after this step we have to do the same step, and instead of ZnSO4 we are going to take the hard water sample, that of which hardness we are going to find out. And doing the same thing with that hard water, we are going to note the reading that the EDTA volume consumed as YML. Now what to do next is we are going to calculate few things which will have to derive the final formula, and we will solve the numerical based on this. So the formula that are required is first of all the calculation by the first method. So let's M1 V1 will be the molarity and volume of ZnSO4 taken in the conical flask, and N2 V2 will be the molarity of EDTA. M2 is to be find out, and volume of EDTA we consider it to be the X, right? So M2 here is equals to M1 V1 by V2. Instead of V2 we are going to write here X as its value. So it is asked only in few questions. Sometimes they do not give the molarity directly. In the second step we are going to find out the hardness of the water. So we are comparing that. We know that the 1 molar EDTA solution is equals to 1 molar Ca2 plus, right? Because both have same N factor, that is 2. Okay, leave that. We know this is what molarity into volume is moles. So number of moles of EDTA is equals to what? In 1000 ml is equals to the molarity into 1000 ml is equals to 1 mole of EDTA, which will be equals to 100 gram of CaCO3, which is the molecular weight of CaCO3, right? So YML of EDTA is equals to what? Y into M2 into 100 upon 1000 grams of CaCO3. Then equivalent hardness will be in this YML will be what? Y into M2 into 100 milligrams. Why milligrams? Because we have already discussed we are going to find out the hardness in milligram per liter or ppm. So this is for the V volume. So in 1000 ml what will be the hardness? The total hardness in the 1000 ml volume will be Y upon V M2 into 100 into 1000. What is Y? Y is the endpoint. Y is the volume of the EDTA that is consumed by the hard water, right? So this is what we are going to use in this numerical. Remember this formula, okay? This is very important. You can forget all this, but this formula is important. So sometimes in the question they are given two volumes, and it is being given that Y is the volume. We consider Y. It is a volume that is consumed when water had not been boiled, and Z is the volume after the boiling, okay? So temporary hardness, so if we have boiled the water, it means the temporary hardness had been removed, and it means that only permanent hardness had been left. So that boiled water will give you what? Only the permanent hardness which is present in the water, and this YML EDTA volume will give you what? It will give the total hardness of the water. So let's understand by solving this numerical, right? So in this numerical we are given with this 50 ml of water sample. So we write V equals to 50 ml, 18 ml of 0.05 m EDTA, okay, M2 is equals to 0.05 directly given to us, and during titration 50 ml of boiled water sample requires 12.5 ml of the same EDTA. So it's without boiling. It means this is giving us the total hardness. So Y is equals to what? 18 ml. Sorry, Y is equals to what? 18 ml from here, because it is without boiling, and this is after boiling. Because whereas 50 ml of boiled water sample required this. So this is a boiled water sample. So this is a Z. So Z is equals to 12.5 and Y is equals to 18 because it is before boiling and it is after boiling. In the titration, calculate total hardness, temporary hardness and permanent hardness. You can take your time, use this formula. Instead of Y here, you can write Z and to find the permanent hardness, and if you write Y, you will get the total hardness. And temporary hardness is equals to what? Total minus permanent. You can take your time and find the solution, and let's discuss it after a few minutes. I hope you have tried this. So see, here we are given with Y is equals to 18 and Z equals to 12.5. So total hardness is equals to what? Y upon V into M2 into 100 into 1000. The same formula I am using. Y is 18 upon 50 into 0.05 into 10 raised to power 5 ppm. That comes out to be 1800 ppm. And the permanent hardness is Z by V into M2 into 100 into 1000. And this is coming out to be 1250 ppm. Sometimes examiner want that you write here ppm of CaCO3. So you can write, because it will not deduct your marks, but it's like it's look good. So here temporary hardness is what? Total minus permanent, which is 1800 minus 1250, you will get 550 ppm. So this was the numerical that is asked on the EDTA. You can solve these type of problems, and in few problems you will be given hardness, you have to find volume, or you have to find Y. So these can be interchanged, but the formula will remain same, and use it and solve different numericals on this topic. The next topic is effect of hard water in boiler. So there are four subtopics in that is, that is boiler corrosion, scale and sludge, foaming and prelim and caustic embrittlement. Okay, so in boiler corrosion there are so effect is, first is boiler corrosion, that boiler is corroded. So it is because of dissolved gases and dissolved salt. In dissolved gases we have O2 and CO2. Why O2? Because it react with the surface of the boiler and form 2Fe2O3.2H2O as a precipitate and corrode the boiler. And what are the prevention? How we can prevent it? By adding Na2SO3 or Na2S and N2H4, okay, or by mechanical deaeration. These are the two prevention methods which are used. And Na2SO3, Na2S, N2H4, these are very important and asked directly. How can we prevent the formation of CO2? First of all, why CO2 do boiler corrosion? Because of formation of carbonic acid which corrode the boiler. So prevention are liquid ammonia. You can use liquid ammonia which will form ammonium carbonate with CO2. Means it will not enable the CO2 to form H2CO3 acid and form ammonium carbonate before that. And the second step is the second method is by mechanical deaeration. It's a whole process, so no need to learn that process, just remember the name. Okay, so second reason of boiler corrosion is dissolved salt. Dissolved salt, basically all the dissolved salt which causes hardness of water are under this. Why? Because they react with water and form their hydroxide which precipitate out. So that's not a problem, but the byproduct is HCl. That's a very big problem because we are getting here a strong acid. So how can we prevent this? By adding a base which will react with acid and neutralize it, or by ion exchange process that we will study in the study later in water treatment. So the next effect is scale and sludge formation, then foaming and priming, and and then caustic embrittlement. So let's study the next, which is scale and sludge. So what are the sludge and what are scales, right? So sludge are basically loose and slimy PPT, and scale are hard and adherent PPT. Sludge formed by the salt which are more soluble in hot water. These are found in the cooler part since they are soluble in hot water. So their PPT will be found in where? Cooler part, and they can be removed by blow down method. What are scales? Adherent PPTs, hard PPTs. They are more soluble in cold water, and these are found in hotter part of the boiler, and these can be removed by EDTA treatment, which we had studied. So what are the causes? Causes are, these are formed due to decomposition of bicarbonate, number 1. Second, hydrolysis of magnesium salt, second, and less solubility in the hot water, that is shown by calcium sulfate, that is third, and presence of silica. So these are the 4 reasons why sludge is formed. Why scale is formed and why sludge is formed? Because the increase in concentration of these salt, the sludge is formed. And what are the disadvantages that we face? These are for the sludge, poor conducting this makes a poor conductor of heat, a boiler. If sludge forms along with the scale, then it gets entrapped in the scale. And the third is it causes choking of pipe. Okay, so these are. Now for the scale also there are some disadvantages, and there are few methods to prevent these. So I had made a very short note, you can see this, in which I have covered the whole unit in a single paper. So from this you can see the prevention for the scale is what? External treatment, we can add chemical to the feed water, internal treatment. And what are the disadvantages of the scale? Wastage of fuel, danger of explosion, lowering of the boiler safety by lowering of the boiler safety. And how these are removed? By the EDTA method, we have already studied. And what are the prevention for the sludge and disadvantages for the sludge? Disadvantages is poor conductor of heat. If sludge formed along with the scale, then get entrapped in the scale, cause choking of the pipe. Prevention is by using soft water, frequent blow down operation, that is replaced by the fresh water. And sludge can be scraped out with the wire, brush and scrapers, which is basically what we are doing. We are using different brush and wire to remove them. Okay, these are foaming and priming. So what are the disadvantages? Why we do not want these? Because it reduces the efficiency, decreases the life of the machinery, and maintenance. There is very high maintenance for this. So what is priming and what is foaming? So priming is basically violent and vigorous boiling of water that led to the steam containing small water droplets. And its causes are presence of large amount of dissolved salt, improper boiler design, high steam velocity, sudden increase in steaming rate. How can we prevent them? We can prevent them by fitting the mechanical steam purifier, avoid rapid change in the steam rate, maintenance of the water level, maintain a water level, and efficient softening and filtration of the water. What is foaming? Basically it's the name is making the image in a mind. It's the persistent foam which do not break easily. Okay, so what its causes? It's because of oil soap, which reduces the surface tension of the water, and high concentration of dissolved salts, violent agitation, fine dispersed suspended matters. And what are the prevention? How can we prevent foaming? By adding castor oil, polyamides, or sodium aluminate. So these are its prevention. So the next topic is caustic embrittlement. Cover the caustic embrittlement and further topic from my this short note, so that we can cover all the topics in this revision video only. So What is caustic embrittlement? It is caused due to the high concentration of NaOH in H2O, called as residual stress. Basically, this is because of the sodium ion, and the reaction that is here happening is Na2CO3 plus H2O giving you NaOH plus CO2, and it is in high pressure boilers. Okay, and this is the further reaction. You can see this. So what are the prevention? How can we prevent the caustic embrittlement? Use of sodium phosphate instead of carbonate. Okay, you can use sodium phosphate instead of carbonate because carbonate form the NaOH, and by treating the boiler water by lignin and tannin, which blocks the minor cracks, thereby preventing the accumulation of the caustic soda, and by adjusting the pH to 8 to 9 and by 8 to 9 carefully. So these are the main points of the caustic embrittlement. The next topic that we are going to cover is your water technology. Water technology, basically we are going to study about zeolite permuted method and ion exchange method. So basically zeolite permuted method is of under the external treatment process. There are two types, internal treatment and external treatment. So this is under what? External treatment, zeolite and ion exchange. Zeolite is basically of two types. Number one is a natural and the second is synthetic. Synthetic is a gel type zeolite. Okay, zeolite is basically hydrated sodium aluminium silicate, and these are cation exchangers and also known as permuted. So its formula is Na2O, Al2O3, X SiO2 and Y H2O, where X vary from 2 to 10 and Y vary from 2 to 6. So what are the reactions which happen here? So these are the various reaction. Basically it react with the zeolite, this is zeolite which react with the salt and exchanges the cation and take it becomes CaZ, and the remaining is as the PPT is removed. So this is what happening in this process. Okay, and then what happened? Basically I can explain you by drawing it. So basically it is a type of container in which water is supplied from here, and there is a belt of zeolite in which the zeolite is present. Main water is passed here. Then what happened? The zeolite which is present here takes the cation. Means suppose here we are passing the water with MgCl2 impurities. So it takes cation as Mgz and it deposited here only, and slowly all this deposit here and zeolite get exhausted. So what we need to regenerate it, so that when we add the extra water it will be also purified. So when this happened, zeolite get exhausted, we stop supplying water. Then what we do? We regenerate the zeolite by adding brine solution, which is 10% of NaCl. 10% brine solution is added, and what happened when this exhausted zeolite react with that brine solution, it forms again the zeolite, which is Mgz plus NaCl. That gives you MgCl2 and Na2Z. Now this is not happening when the water is passing from it. Water supply is stopped, and it is happening when we are passing only brine solution, and when the zeolite bed is again generated, then these impurities that had come from here are collected out and again water is passed from it. So basically water is advantages are that it gives the water up to 10 ppm, means hardness is removed and water hardness remain up to 10 ppm. There is no sludge, it's cheap, equipment occupy less space, less time, clean, automatically adjust. Right? What are the disadvantages? It's caustic embrittlement because it uses sodium ions, not for the turbid and suspended impurities, and basically pH 7 is required, and for not iron and magnesium ions. Why for not iron and magnesium ion? Because zeolite can't exchange iron and magnesium ions. So the next step is an ion exchange or demineralization process. So basically ion exchange is a resin. Ion exchange resin are insoluble cross-linked high molecular organic polymers which are polar structure. Functional group responsible for exchanging these are, and this is basically of two types, cation exchanger and anion exchanger. So cation exchanger here is styrene divinyl benzene copolymer, and which are sulfonated obtained from the strong acid and COH minus and H plus from the weak acid. So this is its structure. You can see here is SO3 minus and H plus, right? And basically what are anion exchanges? These are styrene divinyl benzene or amine formaldehyde copolymers. Strongly basic functional group is required here, and from quaternary ammonium compounds. So weakly basic functional group derived from the primary and secondary amine of RNH3OH. So this is basically the structure of your anion exchange resin. So what is its working? Let's study the working. Diagram of ion exchange process, and this is a cation exchanger, this is an anion exchanger, and the other impurities which are present here are removed here. So when we pass the raw water from here, what happened? The cation exchanger exchange a cation and instead of that give H plus to the water, means the water becomes acidic, and all the washings are removed here, and then acidic water goes to anion exchanger, right? In anion exchanger what happens? OH minus is given in place of the anions. Suppose we are having MgCl2 impurity in our water, so here Mg plus will be taken here only and it will remain here, and H plus is given to here. Basically it will form the compound with that anion exchanger that I shown you the diagram, and H plus with the water, and then here anion exchanger. These are the gravures where the Cl minus will be trapped and OH minus will be given to the water, and then it will go to this and the demineralized water will be out from here. So when all this cation exchanger is exhausted like the zeolite bed, then what happened? To regenerate it, we stop this. Basically we stop this supply and we add dilute HCl in it, and similarly here also for the regeneration we add dilute NaOH in this. So in this way these are regenerated and we can use this again and again. Explain you the working by diagram. Here it is written H2 is passed to anion exchange resin, then cation exchange resin, H plus is replaced, here OH minus is replaced, and these are replaced with the cations. H plus is replaced with Na plus, Ca2 plus, Mg2 plus, and anion is replaced by Cl, SO4 and CO3 minus, NO3 minus. And then when this all get exhausted goes to both the two, then these are regenerated. Cation exchange is regenerated by dilute HCl passing by passing this and H2SO4 or H2SO4, and anion exchange is regenerated by passing solution of dilute NaOH, right? So what are its disadvantages? What is its advantages and disadvantages? So advantages is that it is highly acidic or basic. H2O can be softened, means the water which is highly acidic or basic, this can be used in it, and have very low hardness, means the water which will be come out of that have very low hardness, which is from 0 to 2 ppm. After, okay, suitable for the high pressure boilers. Why it's suitable for the high pressure boilers? Because we are not using sodium here, and high pressure boilers have the problem of caustic embrittlement because of sodium ion. Okay, what are disadvantages? Equipment is costly, chemical is expensive, and high turbid water cannot be purified from this method. Okay, so next is what? Purification of water by the electrodialysis, right? So purification of water by electrodialysis is basically the next topic that we are going to cover. It is different from the boiler problems which had been covered. So here what we are going to do, we are removing the ionic impurities using current. We are using the DC current, which is direct current here, to remove ionic impurities, and using electrode and ion selective membrane, right? So what is the principle of electrodialysis? Ion in the saline water migrates towards their respective electrodes through the ion selective membrane. So cation move towards the cathodes and anion move towards the anode. These are Nr3 plus and SO3 minus, UO minus, right? So what are its application? Basically, potable water from the sea, mineralization of the boiler feed H2O, desalination of the contained in industrial wastage of for use, recovery of the salt from the salt concentrated water. So this is one of the topic which was different from that, and a small topic. And such similarly we have a small topic of reverse osmosis. So basically in reverse osmosis the principle is pressure over the high concentration make the flow high to low. Means if we are applying the pressure to the high concentration side, then it makes the flow from high concentrated to low concentrated solution. And this is possible through the semi-permeable membrane which is attached. In this decode, in this you can see this is the whole process of the reverse osmosis. Here you apply the external pressure, here the water with impurities and flow of water is here. So this is a semi-permeable membrane and impurities remain here and the pure water is passed here, right? So that I had written. So in this case, the semi-permeable membrane is made up of thin films of the cellulose acetate or polymethyl acrylate or polyamide polymers are used. Okay, this topic is what covered. So after this, the question mostly comes that is what are the advantages of RO water. So these are the advantages. Capital and operation cost is very low compared to these which I had already covered. It removes the colloidal silica, cannot be removed by demineralization process, right? Silica cannot be removed by demineralization process, which is removed by RO water, and it happens in few minutes actually. So it converts at low cost and capital. It removes organic bacteria, virus, but there is a limitations. What is the limitation? That bacteria having the smallest size than the pore size cannot be removed. Another limitations are do not contain essential minerals, and taste is also affected, that we all know. Okay, so here membrane decay and require periodic replace. So we can generate other here and in zeolite and ion exchange, but here it should be replaced. Okay. So we have covered the unit 1. We have left with the alkalinity numericals and the numericals on the zeolite process. So let's cover that. Going to cover the alkalinity part of this unit. We have given the different numericals. So what we are going to do, we are taking the BML of water. We are adding 2 drops of the phenolphthalein indicator to it. Then pink color will become and it will enter the colorless, right? Then again to this solution we are adding 2 drops of methyl orange, and then it will converts to yellow to reddish or orange pink. So if this happens, then there will be some results that will be used to find the alkalinity. So first of all, you should know that alkalinity of there are alkalinity of the 5 types. So what are the 5 types? The 5 types are into this numerical on alkalinity. So a quick recap, what we are doing in this, we are titrating the acid, simply sulfuric acid with hard water, right? And we are adding phenolphthalein and methyl orange. And first of all, we are adding phenolphthalein, and we are getting V1 as an endpoint, where colorless to pink to colorless, and then we are adding methyl orange, V2 as an endpoint. So the formula which we are using is the volume of sulfuric acid consumed when P is used, and upon the total volume of the hard water into Z into 50 into thousands. So यहाँ से we will calculate P, and then we will use again this formula for the methyl orange. Means when we added methyl orange, then the next volume that is consuming. Yes, one thing remember that if we are using sulfuric acid, suppose this is a burette. So this much volume is already consumed when we added phenolphthalein by the base which is present here, right? Now when we are adding methyl orange to this, so suppose this much volume again get consumed. So for methyl orange, V2 is this volume, not this left one. Okay, so remember this thing. So this is the formula we are going to use, and this is the question. 50 ml of alkaline water sample required 5.2 ml of N by 50. One thing more, because we are using here normality, we are using 50. Because carbonate, the weight of the molecular weight of the carbonate is 100, but for the normality usage we will use 50 here because its N factor is 2. Okay, HCl up to the phenolphthalein endpoint and 15.4 ml for the complete neutralization. Find the type and amount of the alkalinity. So let's solve this question. So they are asking find the type and amount. So for the type, what we need to find out? We need to find out. So first of all, write what are the given. So V1 is what? V1 is 5.2 ml, right? And V2 is what? V2 is 15.4 ml. Remember, this 5.2 ml is like this. If this is a burette, so this is the level of the sulfuric acid. This much is 5.2 used for the phenolphthalein indicator, and this much more is used, and the net is what? 15.4, right? So 15.4, and what else is given? The total volume of the hard water is 50 ml, right? And the normality which is given is N by 1 by 50. So let's use this and find P. So P is basically what? V, that is V1, 5.2 upon 50 into 1 by 50. Here Z represents the normality, don't confuse, okay? And then into 50 into 1000. So this will be in ppm or milligram per liter, right? So this will be what? When you will solve this, you will get 1.04 ppm, right? Sorry, here it will be 50. So you will get P equals to 104 ppm. And similarly for the methyl orange, you will put here 15.4 upon 50 into 1 by 50 into 50 into 1000. So 50 got cancelled, and here you get what? 20, and if you multiply 20 here, 10, this 154 double is what? 308 ppm. For a reference, here write M by 2, that is 154, because we have to use this by when we are comparing in the table. So the relation, what is the relation between P and M? You can see that M by 2 is 154 and P is 104, means P is less than M by 2. So let's see the table, what it is showing us. When P is less than M by 2, we have carbonate and bicarbonate impurity, and carbonate impurity is 2P, bicarbonate impurity is M minus 2P. So the first part is solved, that what is the type of alkalinity? It is carbonate and bicarbonate impurity. And how much? So we already know from the table that the carbonate impurity is 2P, which is the double of 104, which is 208 ppm, and HCO3 impurity is what? M minus 2P, which is equals to what? 308 minus 208, which is 100 ppm. So this is the required answer of the question, right?